Hello, dear audience. Thank you for coming back to the stormy love story of Truong and Tieu Nu, where tears, smiles, and faith intertwine like the very breath of life itself. After so many ups and downs, so many moments of loss and rediscovery, will Truong finally remember everything and realize who the girl is that has silently waited for him all this time? And if his memories return, will a happy wedding truly come, or will fate test their love once again? Let's continue this emotional journey together, where love is tested by time, and only two hearts that truly belong to each other can find their way back through the storms of life. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell, because ahead lies so much more that will make your heart tremble with every beat. After Truong went missing for many days, Tieu Nu lived through endless dragging months torn between worry and hope. She still believed that somewhere out there, the man she loved was alive, still trying to find his way back to her. But as time went on, that faith slowly turned into a quiet ache that lingered in her heart. One afternoon, as the sunset began to fade, Tieu Nu visited a kind old woman who lived at the end of the village, someone she often came to see, to talk with, and share small stories about life. The little house stood humbly among bamboo groves, filled with the smell of wood smoke and the distant sound of roosters, a peaceful, almost nostalgic scene. Tieu Nu never imagined that this very place, so simple and familiar, would soon become the setting of a fateful reunion. As the old woman poured her a cup of tea, footsteps echoed outside. Tieu Nu looked up, and her heart nearly stopped. A man appeared in the doorway, tall, slender, his eyes deep but unfamiliar. His hair had grown longer, his skin tanned, and faint scars traced along his arms. Tieu Nu froze her eyes wide, her lips trembling. "Truong, is that you?" Her voice was barely a whisper, yet it carried all the trembling emotion she'd kept inside. He paused, looking at her with confusion. A heavy silence filled the air, broken only by the rustle of the bamboo leaves outside. "Who are you?" Truong asked, his voice low and distant. That single question shattered her heart. Tears welled in her eyes as she tried to stay composed. The old woman finally spoke softly. "He fell down a mountainside months ago. When I found him, he had no memory of anything. The only thing I knew was his name, Truong, written on a small piece of paper in his pocket." Tieu Nu turned towards him, tears streaming down her cheeks. She stepped closer, her voice trembling. "You really don't remember anything? Don't remember me, or the days we shared together?" Truong avoided her gaze and slowly shook his head. In his eyes was a mix of emptiness and pain, as if something deep inside him was struggling to surface but couldn't yet break free. The small room grew heavy with silence. The last rays of sunlight slipped through the window, falling across Tieu Nu's face, where a single tear glistened before dropping onto her trembling hands. The old woman sighed softly. She knew there are wounds that time cannot immediately heal, and memories that, even forgotten, still hide somewhere deep within the heart. That evening, Tieu Nu left quietly. On the misty village road, she walked slowly, glancing back at the little house behind her. The faint light shining through the window reminded her Truong was still there. He might not remember, but he was alive, and perhaps that alone was already a miracle. From that day on, she began visiting the old woman more often. Sometimes she brought rice, sometimes a bundle of vegetables, or simply came to help mend the wooden fence. But deep down, the real reason was to see Truong even if he no longer recognized her. Each time he passed through the yard, she would look at him quietly, a faint, sorrowful smile on her lips. She didn't dare to mention the past nor their old promises, afraid it might confuse him even more. There were nights when Truong sat alone on the porch, gazing at the starry sky, feeling a strange ache in his chest. He didn't know why, but the sight of that gentle girl with her soft, warm smile stirred something familiar and tender within him. It was as if he had once loved her deeply, but life was never kind to them. New trials soon emerged, not only from the memories he had lost, but also from those around them, who did not want to see them together again. One early morning, when the mist still blanketed the narrow path, Tieu Nu came to the old woman's house just as she did every day. In her hands was a small basket of freshly picked vegetable. Her fingers carried the scent of earth and dew. But today felt different. There was no sound of sawing wood, no familiar figure of Truong working quietly in the yard. A sudden unease filled her chest. "Grandma, where's Truong?" she asked softly, her voice trembling. The old woman looked at her kind eyes, hiding something deeper. "He went to the hill behind the house early this morning. Lately, he's been going there. Often says he wants to find something important he once lost." Tieu Nu's heart quivered. She set the basket down and quickly walked toward the dirt road leading up the hill, the very place where she and Truong once watched sunsets together, where their laughter had once echoed through the wind. The breeze picked up scattering dry leaves across the path. With every step, her heartbeat quickened. When she finally reached the top, she saw him standing still, gazing toward the horizon. The morning sunlight brushed across his face, warm yet thoughtful. She called softly, "Truong." He turned around. In that instant, time seemed to stop. Their eyes met, and suddenly fragments of memories surged through Truong's mind like crashing waves. Tieu Nu, laughing under the sunlight, her hand gripping his tightly in the middle of a busy market. Tieu Nu crying as she saw him off, and the promise he once made, "No matter what happens, come back to you." Truong staggered, clutching his head, breathing heavily. The past kept flashing back clearer and clearer, like a film replaying in his mind. Tieu Nu panicked, rushing to his side. "What's wrong? You're scaring me." Truong looked up, his eyes glistening with tears, his voice trembling. "Tieu Nu, is it really you?" At that moment, the world seemed to burst open. Tieu Nu froze, then broke into tears, nodding over and over. "It's me. It's really me, Truong. Do you remember now?" Truong smiled faintly, a trembling smile filled with emotion. He reached out gently, touching her cheek where tears were falling. "I remember everything now. all of it. The days we shared the promises. I made the way you waited for me. I'm so sorry for making you endure all this alone. Tieu Nu sobbed and collapsed into his arms. They held each other tightly in the morning wind as if afraid that letting go would make everything vanish again. The sound of the wind swept across the hill, mingling with the beating of their hearts, wild, tender, and full of life. Truong embraced her, even tighter, his voice choked with emotion. I walked through darkness, but it was you who brought me back to the light. Thank you for never giving up on me. Tieu Nu looked uppy, her tearful eyes shining as she whispered, I never stopped believing. Even if the whole world forgot you, I never did. They fell silent. No words were needed. Their breaths, their gaze said everything. Their love had overcome memory, time, and every trial. From afar, the old woman stood at her doorway, smiling gently at the two figures embracing on the hilltop. Sunlight poured over them brighter and warmer than ever before. In the days that followed, Truong fully recovered. He helped the old woman with her chores, while Tieu Nu visited every day this time, not in silence, but with laughter and stories. Every time she told him about their past, the moments they once lived together, he would hold her hand tightly as if to say, I'll never lose you again. Then one afternoon, beneath the bougainvillea vines at the porch, Truong took her hand and said softly yet firmly, I want to start over, not as strangers, but as we were on the day we first met. Only this time, I won't let fate separate us again. Tieu Nu smiled, her lips trembling with joy. I've waited for those words for so many years. Hand in hand, they walked down the sunlit village road. Ahead of them, the orange blossoms were in full bloom, their fragrance carried gently by the wind. Behind them, the past, the pain, the struggles all faded away. Now, there was only faith and happiness, a tight embrace, a tearful smile, and two hearts that finally found their way back to each other after losing one another in the maze of time. After the day, Truong regained all his memories. The small village where they lived seemed to glow with an indescribable joy. People often saw him and Tieu Nu together, going to the market, fixing the wooden fence, or helping the old woman plant new flower beds in front of the porch. The two of them seemed to be making up for all the time they had lost. Every glance, every smile overflowed with love. The old woman who had saved Truong's life watched them with a gentle smile and said, My dear, when two people are truly destined, no matter how far they go, they will always find their way back to each other. Tieu Nu smiled softly and held Truong's hand tight. For the first time, after so many storms, she finally felt peace in her heart. Then one afternoon, as the sunset bathed the village in gold, Truong suddenly knelt down in the middle of the yard, holding a white-orange blossom, her favorite flower. He looked at her with warm, tender eyes. I once lost you, but now I want to spend the rest of my life making it up to you. Tieu Nu, will you marry me? She froze her hands trembling. Tears rolled down her cheeks, tears of happiness. "I've waited so long for these words," she whispered, nodding through her tears as the old woman and a few neighbors who happened to pass by cheered joyfully. News of their wedding spread quickly through the village. Everyone was happy for them, a young couple who had endured so much pain, yet finally found their happy ending. The whole village came together to help Uncle Nam at the alley built the wedding tent. Miss Thoa from the market donated fabric to make the bride's dress. And the children, full of excitement, counted down the days to witness the most beautiful wedding in the village. That morning, the sky was stunningly blue. The first rays of sunlight shone over the rice fields, carrying the scent of young rice and beetle flowers into the yard. Tieu Nu wore a simple, pure white ao dai. Her hair was neatly tied, adorned with a small orange blossom. The old woman took her hand, smiling kindly. "My dear, you look so beautiful today. Smile brightly. This happiness is what you truly deserve." Tieu Nu nodded, her eyes glistening with emotion. Outside, the sound of drums and flutes filled the air. Truong stood at the gate, dressed in a traditional brown ao dai, his face radiant. He looked towards the small room where Tieu Nu was stepping out, his heart swelling with emotion. When their eyes met, it was as if every past sorrow melted away in that single moment. Truong took her hand, his voice trembling slightly. "You're here. It feels like this dream has finally become real." Tieu Nu smiled through her tears. "No, this isn't a dream. This is our reality, earned through every tear we shed." The wedding took place in laughter and pure joy. There was no fancy hall, no elaborate gown, only beetle flowers, palm leaves, wooden tables, and sincere hearts. The old woman sat in the front row, her eyes moist as she watched the couple kneel before the ancestral altar, lighting incense and praying for a new beginning. When Truong led Tieu Nu out into the golden sunlight, he whispered, "I once forgot everything. But there's one thing. I could never lose my love for you." Tieu Nu looked up, smiling through her tears. "You don't know, when you disappeared, I thought I'd never be able to smile again. But today, I want to smile as wide as I can, because after all the storms, we finally made it here." Paper fireworks burst in the sky. Children cheered and the elders chuckled together. Such a blessed couple, meant to be by heaven itself. Tieu Nu looked around. Everyone was smiling, and in that moment, she realized that happiness wasn't something far away. It was right here among the people she loved. That evening, oil lamps flickered around the yard. Simple dishes filled the tables: braised fish, vegetable soup, sticky rice, and sweet bean dessert. The neighbors sang cheerful folk songs, joined by Truong's guitar, playing the same melody he wrote for Tieu Nu back in their early days of love. She rested her head on his shoulder, whispering softly, "I don't need luxury or riches. Just being with you here in this little home is enough." He smiled. Then I promise, from now on, every morning when I wake up, the first thing I'll do is look at you, just to remind myself that I'm living in happiness. In the distance, the children's handmade fireworks sparkled, crackling in the night sky. Their light reflected in the couple's eyes like tiny stars witnessing their love. The old woman stepped out slowly, her voice gentle as the breeze. After every storm, the sky clears again. As long as you keep loving and caring for each other, happiness will never leave. Truong and Tieu Nu bowed deeply. Thank you, Grandma, for saving not just a life, but our love as well. That night, when the guests had left, they sat together on the porch, watching the full moon hanging in the quiet sky. Truong wrapped his arms around her and whispered, "I once lost my way in life, but in the end I found my way home to you." Tieu Nu replied softly, her voice trembling with emotion, "And I'll hold on to you so we'll never lose each other again." The sound of crickets hummed across the fields, the wind rustled gently through the betel trees, and the rhythm of their hearts blended into one tender, warm, and complete. The wedding of Truong and Tieu Nu wasn't just the end of a long journey through loss. It was the beginning of a new chapter where love was rewritten with faith and gratitude. Thank you for staying with this story until the very end. Let's send our blessings to Truong and Tieu Nu, who proved that true love, even when lost in memory, will always find its way back again. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell, because there are many more stories of love and happiness waiting ahead.